If a person is unable to listen to the instructions for their own brain to the end, the amygdala will always rule their wallet. Impatience is the most expensive tax in the world, and those in whom it is off the charts will pay for it with their unfulfilled dreams. Imagine an individual who suddenly, in a single evening, becomes the owner of 5 million euros. Popular fantasy paints pictures of endless bliss, but the biological reality looks like a scene from a high-stakes drama. The moment the numbers on the screen confirm multimillionaire status, a literal storm erupts inside the skull. The pupils dilate to their limit, the skin turns pale due to a sudden diversion of blood to the major muscles, and the heart begins to pound at a rate of 140 beats per minute. The body isn't celebrating. The body is switching into emergency survival mode. For the ancient structures of the brain, a sharp increase in resources is not freedom. It is a massive, critical risk zone. In this moment, the amygdala, the tiny almond-shaped cluster responsible for survival, sends out signals of maximum alarm. We've been spotted. We stand out too much. We are in danger. This is the radical realism of human existence. We are genetically programmed to fear the very thing we strive for with all our soul, and to understand why a person so stubbornly sabotages their own income, we must look into the bunker, the limbic system. That is where the amygdala lives. It is not a philosopher, not an economist, and not even a decent member of society. It is a primitive mechanism whose intelligence is stuck in the Paleolithic era. Its sole task is to make sure the organism survives until tomorrow. For the amygdala, anything new is dangerous. Big money is an entirely new environment. If a person is used to living on 1,500 euros a month, their brain has built a cozy, albeit cramped fortress around that sum. It knows where to get food, how to pay rent, and how to complain about life. This is predictable. And for the brain, predictability is the highest form of safety. When a sum of 100,000 euros looms on the horizon, the amygdala sees not opportunity, but a threat to this fragile stability. It sends a signal to the hypothalamus, which, like a loyal adjutant, instantly activates the sympathetic nervous system. A flood of cortisol begins, the primary marker of financial stress. Cortisol is not just a hormone. It is a toxic barrier that blocks the capacity for logical planning. In a state of cortisol storm, it is extremely difficult for a person to make sound investment decisions. They become a hostage to their instincts, wanting only one thing: for it all to stop and go back to how it was before. Let's break down the process step by step. As soon as a real chance to earn serious money arises, for example, through a complex project or a major deal, norepinephrine levels rise in the blood. This causes a person to feel excitement, which the brain often confuses with anxiety. Then the prefrontal cortex enters the game, the smart part of the brain. But here's the catch. Under pressure from the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex begins to rationalize the fear. The person tells themselves, "It's too risky. Now is not the time," or "I won't be able to handle the 30% tax." In reality, this isn't logic. It is the voice of a terrified amygdala using words from an adult's dictionary. Simultaneously, serotonin levels drop. When a person steps out of their comfort zone, the brain stops feeling socially significant within its accustomed circle. After all, if you become rich, old friends, who don't have 10,000 euros in their accounts, might turn away. The anticipation of social isolation triggers a neural response similar to physical pain in the anterior cingulate cortex. For our biochemistry, losing connection with the group is a critical threat signal, comparable to physical danger. Imagine a child who is gifted a massive, complex model train set worth 1,000 euros. At first, he is delighted. But after an hour, he starts to cry. Why? Because the toy is too complex, he's afraid of breaking it, and he gets scolded if the parts are scattered. Subconsciously, the child wants to go back to his old wooden blocks, which can be thrown around and require no such responsibility. An adult is that same child, but his model train is a capital of $200,000. The complexity of management, the fear of loss, the necessity of making decisions, all of this overloads the brain's processor. As a result, the individual performs a classic drain. They suddenly buy an unnecessary expensive car, invest in risky ventures, or simply lose interest in work. This isn't laziness. It is an act of biological mercy. The brain is ridding its master of the source of stress, returning them to the wooden blocks of their habitual financial minimum. Dopamine is often called the joy hormone, but that is a lie. Dopamine is the hormone of anticipation. When a person dreams of a check for 50,000 euros, dopamine flows like a river. The brain paints glowing pictures. But the moment the money is received, the dopamine tap is shut off. A dopamine crash follows. At this moment, the person feels a strange emptiness. Is this it? The brain asks. Where is the promised ecstasy? Instead of joy, an awareness of responsibility arrives. Here, vasopressin kicks in, a hormone linked to territorial behavior and aggression. The person begins to see enemies in everyone, imagining they want to take his resources. The world turns into a dangerous place. The biochemistry of a rich person often resembles that of a creature trapped in a golden cage. Plenty of resources, but no peace. There is another secret player, cytokines. These are proteins the immune system uses to fight inflammation. Research shows that the fear of social exclusion, which is inevitable during rapid financial growth, causes an increase in cytokine levels in the blood. Simply put, when a person starts earning 10,000 euros where everyone else gets 500, their body triggers a total braking mode. The body essentially flips the breaker. An unexplained slump in energy, apathy, and a refusal to get out of bed occur. The brain interprets success not as a victory, but as a heavy burden that must be discarded. The only way to feel normal again is to remove the cause of this internal pressure, to drain the excess money. This is why lottery winners who score millions often end up in even deeper debt a year later. They aren't stupid. They were subconsciously saving themselves from stress, striving to return to their habitual calm, even if that calm means poverty. We are all descendants of those who survived. And in ancient times, those who survived were the ones who didn't stand out. Those who found an extra piece of meat had to either eat it quickly or share it with the tribe. Accumulation was impossible, meat rotted, and enemies attacked. A modern human with a bank account is an evolutionary anomaly. Our genes harbor a fear of surplus. When a sum exceeding basic needs enters the account, for example, an extra $20,000, the ancient distribute or destroy program is activated. If a person does not recognize this mechanism, they will forever spin in the earn and drain cycle, wondering at their own bad luck. 5 techniques for taming the financial amygdala. To stop being a hostage to ancient instincts, you must use methods that trick your biology. Technique number 1, the golden standard. The amygdala fears sharp spikes. To calm it, you must habituate the brain to the attributes of wealth through micro doses. Once a month, visit places where the concentration of money is at its maximum. Luxury hotels or high-end car dealerships. But do it not as a tourist, but as an observer. The task is to stay there until your cortisol levels drop, until your body relaxes and your breathing becomes steady. You must literally show the amygdala. Look, there are 500,000 euros here in the form of this car, and there is no danger. This is safe. Technique number 2. Reprogramming through BDNF. BDNF is a protein that helps the brain build new connections. Its levels rise during intense physical exercise. The technique is this: planning major financial goals or working with large accounts should happen immediately after a workout. When the brain is flooded with BDNF, it becomes more plastic and less prone to fear. This allows you to link the concept of big money with a state of physical strength rather than panic. Technique number 3. Gradual exposure. To avoid internal tension, you must train the brain to numbers gradually. If your current income is 2,000 euros, you should write in a notebook every day how you would spend 2,200 euros. After a week, 2,500. After a month, 3,000. This is not the magic of visualization. It is training your dopamine receptors. The brain gets used to the growth of numbers without triggering the alarm mode. We trick the amygdala by making wealth predictable. Technique number 4. Social proof. To prevent the fear of being cast out of the tribe, you must find a new tribe. The brain needs to see people for whom 50,000 euros is the norm. When mirror neurons observe that others are calm in the presence of such sums, the amygdala relaxes. Copying the composure of others is the fastest path to biological adaptation. Technique number 5. Cognitive relabeling, adrenaline reframing. When your heart starts racing at the thought of a major contract, say out loud, "This isn't fear. This is preparation for expansion." You must replace the biochemical interpretation of danger with mobilization. This shifts the signal from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex, returning control of the situation to you. Ultimately, wealth is not the numbers in a banking app. Wealth is the level of silence inside the amygdala. It is the ability to look at a sum of 1 million euros with the same composure as one looks at a morning cup of coffee. Whoever understands that their fear is merely an echo of ancient forests and hungry predators gains the key to the cage. We live in the 21st century, but we carry equipment in our heads that is hundreds of thousands of years old. The irony of fate is that the truly wealthy person is not the one who works the most, but the one who convinced their inner monkey that money equals a rich life. The world belongs to those who have learned to negotiate with their cortisol, and when the amygdala finally falls asleep, the prefrontal cortex begins to work true wonders. Because in reality, the only obstacle between a person and their first million is a tiny bundle of neurons in the shape of an almond, which simply wants you to stay alive, even if it's in a state of habitual deficiency. Radical realism requires us to admit fear will never disappear. But you can change your relationship with it. The next time your breath catches at the sight of a large sum in euros or dollars, don't blame yourself for being timid. Just smile and say, "Hello, amygdala. I know you're here. Thanks for looking out for me, but today, we're moving forward." In that moment, a miracle happens. Biology submits to the will. And then the financial ceiling, which seemed like solid concrete, suddenly turns out to be made of thin glass. Now, knowing how the internal kitchen of the brain works, a person is no longer a slave to their hormones. They become the conductor.